Hello again, friends, and welcome to another segment of Doc G's Wine and Spirits Review. As you can see, I am not alone today. I am accompanied by a special person here at this winery. I'd like to welcome you all to this segment to talk about wine made here at Maple Springs Vineyard in Bechtelsville, Pennsylvania. And you might ask, where the heck is Bechtelsville? Well, it's situated between Boyertown and Ole, just off of Route 73 in eastern Berks County. So to all of you, I'd like to welcome you. I'd like to introduce the winemaker here at Maple Springs. His name is Jeff Stebbins, and he's going to take us on a little journey through the exciting adventures here at Maple Springs Vineyard. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers. Not going to tell you what this is yet, but it is National White Wine Day today. So cheers to that, and cheers to being here at Maple Springs. So, Jeff, do you want to give us a little overview here of the winery, its operation, and what your involvement has been with the winery? Just give us a little bit of a historical overview.
Okay, so let's see. We started here, well, go back even before we really started. Marianne Lieberman, who is the owner, first planted Chardonnay grapes here in 2008. That was kind of her favorite go-to grape, and she kind of in the back of her mind said if this whole project didn't work, she would have plenty of Chardonnay for her to drink, so she would enjoy it.
She and I get along well because I love Chardonnay.
It's a great grape, and it does amazingly well here. So she worked with Eric Metz, who is our current vineyard manager still, in 2008, and they planted 2 vineyards. They worked with Jamie Fisher, who is a soil scientist, and kind of set up the vineyards in a really neat way. They used Dijon clones, which was really great, and they did 2 different orientations. We had a north-south orientation and an east-west orientation at 2 different elevations in the vineyard. And so we were able to kind of really see how those grapes would do on the property, and that was the first test site. I ended up, at about 2010, I met Jamie Fisher at a conference, and he kind of said, oh, wow, you're crazy, Marianne's crazy, you guys should get together. And we did, and we hit it off really well, and I came out here, I saw the property, and she asked me, hey, do you want to stick around and help us plant some Gruner Veltliner? And I was like, sure. And so the next week, I was back here, and we put in 1,000 Gruner vines in what became Maddie's Vineyard, which is the 3rd of our fields. And, you know, I never left after that. So I've been here now 11 years. And it was great for me because I got to work with Marianne, and we kind of worked hand in hand to figure out what varietals would be really good on the property, and sort of seamed it in and made it all work together. And we built the winery from the ground up.
So talk to us a little bit about, you obviously you mentioned a few different grapes, and we'll get to that in a minute. What did you notice about the soil here? Because I know a lot of people are followers here, and people that follow wine in general, if you follow it very closely, you pay attention to the soil. So is there anything that you can say that's special about the soil here in this region?
Well, when I came in with Jamie Fisher, the very first thing he had, you know, I walked into these fields, and he had already dug soil pits. And so you could walk into these pits and go about 12 feet down and really see the stratification of what the soil was. It was really neat for me because the first thing I thought when I saw the soil was, oh my gosh, this is beautiful Rhone soil. And we have the same stoniness. We had a little bit of clay, we had some sand, we had some silt, we had some loam holding it all together, and just the makeup of it and the stoniness of it. There were just rocks everywhere. It just really reminded me of looking out over the Rhone. And we decided consequently that in some of the fields that we wanted to try and play with Rhones. Now I will say the pH is very different than what you would find in Rhone, where in Rhone you're seeing more alkaline.
You mean the Rhone Valley in France?
Yes, yes. You're seeing a much more alkaline soil. We have very acidic soil, so there were some fundamental differences. And so, you know, we were kind of learning and working with what we have.
So it's safe to say for the average wine drinker that the dirt where these is grown matters.
I would think so, but I will tell you, over time, I've kind of learned something. You know, when people talk about dirt and terroir, they're really speaking about what is the impression that the land has made on the grapes, and can you taste that in the wine? In the 11 years that I've been here working this land and the soil and the grapes, I've really never seen the same weather pattern twice in a year. And I almost think that where people talk about how the land makes such a difference in the influence of the wine, I personally feel like the air and the weather have just a tremendous impact on the characteristics and the flavors of what's happening in the wine. And maybe that is an extension of the land itself, but we do have a very unique set of weather here.
I would, for the viewers, for your own information, I have been a member here at Maple Springs Winery. One of the features that they have is they really make it a hands-on family kind of experience. And before COVID hit, the year before that hit, I was actually fortunate enough to come onto the property. They have grape picking parties. It's a great model. They get free labor. They hand you, it's not free, they give you free wine and free food, and you get to pick the grapes. So I can vouch for the fact that there's a very hilly terrain here, and from what I understand about winemaking, the more hills you have, the better suited you seem to be for growing good grapes.
I think a lot of people think that, for sure. I think that
so you don't think that's necessarily true?
It's okay. So right, there's perspectives.
Gotcha.
Right. Some of the best, most incredible vineyards in the world are hillside vineyards, no doubt. You just can't argue that. But that's not to say if you have a flat site, you can't have amazing viticulture and amazing grapes. When I was working in California, I worked on pretty much valley floor fruit for about 10 years. And it was mind-blowingly good wine.
Excellent. So there, that goes to show you.
You know, it's a different characteristic. When you're on the hillside, you have drainage. And I think people equate, in a long roundabout way, the movement of water really controls how much the vines grow. And so if you have water that's consistently getting to where it needs to go, but then draining off, it limits your vigor. And by limiting the vigor, you're controlling the size of the berries. And then by limiting the size of the berries, you're concentrating the effects of the ripening from the leaf mass that you have into a smaller berry. And you might get more intensity in the flavors from that.
Excellent.
So that's one way to look at it.
So let's move. That gives all of you a little idea of there's a lot going on here. They make really good wine here. The grapes are, I know from the experience that the owner of the property really likes Chardonnay, but they don't only do Chardonnay. So Jeff, why don't you talk to us about the different varietals that you have had success with here at Maple Springs over the years?
Okay. Well, certainly Chardonnay. Chardonnay is our flagship for sure. At one point, I think we had an inventory of 9 distinctly different Chardonnays. We no longer have that. We've kind of toned it down and really focused.
I've had them all, by the way.
Yeah, and they're all, and they're very, very different.
Haven't had a bad one.
Yeah, and you know, we've done some different things. Right now, we've kind of dialed that back a little bit and really wanted to focus on our house style a little bit. So we could talk about the wines in a little bit too. Other varietals that we do a Gruner Veltliner, and we started that in a very, very traditional way where we wanted to mimic a cask fermentation. Oh, okay. And so a lot of traditional Gruner is made in a very large wooden cask, and I don't have those. So we took neutral barrels and we did fermentations in neutral barrels, and then as soon as the fermentations were done, we would move them into stainless and kind of keep it very clean and focused, and then bottle it as quick as possible to kind of preserve the fruit characteristics of the vine.
If I may interrupt here, just for my wine friends out there, Gruner Veltliner is an excellent wine if you can find it. We'll talk about how you can get theirs in a couple minutes. But it's a grape whose parentage comes from Austria. It's very popular in the Finger Lakes, and it's also popular here in Pennsylvania. So it is one that I recommend at some point that all of you try to go out and find. It's a nice, snappy, white wine that we'll talk about later. We're going to sample some. So back to you, Jeff.
Okay. We also, let's see, we grew a Pinot Noir, and that's one of your favorites, I think.
And Burgundy wines, yes.
Yep. Up until about 3 years ago, we had Syrah. And the Syrah is kind of an interesting vineyard story too. So we planted Syrah and it was doing really great. And then we had a very, very severe winter. As the climate dropped to about -10 here, we saw a lot of damage to the Syrah. It just didn't handle the winter damage like some of the other grapes. And so we replanted it. And then we had another bad winter and we did the same thing again. And it got to be where there were some rows of Syrah that had been replanted 5 times. And at that point we were like, maybe there's something going on here. So we planted that over to Blaufränkisch. And we still have a little bit of Syrah out in the field, but this year we'll be bringing to production the first Hellcat Red, which is a blend of Blaufränkisch, and the remaining, I think, 13% Syrah, which is really exciting.
Forward to that.
That's going to be
that
neat
does
wine.
sound exciting. And Blaufränk, again, for you novices, it's another German-Austrian grape, also known as Lemberger. Again, popular here in Pennsylvania, popular in the Finger Lakes as well. Highly recommend that one as well. I'm looking forward to that one.
They have some amazing Blaufränkisch from Washington State as well.
Absolutely.
And that was one of the first places where it was commercially planted in the United States.
I did not know that.
Washington. Yeah, it's neat. It's a neat grape. We also have Albarreño, which is a Spanish grape. Came from the region of Galicia, and it's this gorgeous grape. And again, it's another one where it can handle the humidity of being near the ocean. It handles cold winters really, really well. It likes soil like what we have. In Galicia, though, they trellis it very high because they have wild pigs that come through the vineyard and want to eat all the grapes.
Excellent.
And that is a problem we don't have here. So
I want to say excellent story, not excellent for the grapes.
So yeah, you'll see it. It's trellised really high. But Albarreño is an amazing grape. We only get a little bit of it, and it has clusters smaller than my fist.
Wow.
And a lot of times those clusters have 5 or 6 seeds inside each berry. And so you have these really, really low juice ratios. And even though, we have maybe a little more than double the rows of Albarreño that we do Gruner, I get about a quarter of the amount of juice from those extra rows that I do from the Gruner.
Well, let me interject a side story. It's the Albarreño here that first indicated to me that there was even a place called Maple Springs Vineyards. I was up at a local restaurant not far from here called Landis Store.
Oh.
And on the menu was Maple Springs Albarreño. And we opened a bottle and we all looked at each other and went, the hell? Where is this place? So we began our search. And lo and behold, your Albarreño. I did a spot, for those of you following me long enough, one of my earlier spots was featured just with Albarreño, and we used their Albarreño because it's good.
It's really good. It usually sells out in about 4 or 5 days at the most.
I think I might have a bottle or 2 left. But
yeah.
I keep Albarreño, actually, there's one of your competitors here, Stony Run Winery. I keep theirs around. They had a low yield too. Yeah. I buy it from any place I can find Albarreño, I buy it.
Yeah,
it's usually pretty good.
Stony Runs is really nice. Those guys are nice people too. So, yeah, good folks.
So why don't we? Actually, why don't you take a little sip, Jeff, and get yourself ready here?
Cheers.
We're going to move into another phase here. We'd like to actually feature a couple of the wines and let Jeff talk about one of the projects that they started a couple years ago, and we'll do that as we discuss some of the wines. Okay. So you want to start with this one?
Yeah, let's go into this one. So this is our 2020 Chardonnay. Normally, our Chardonnays are really an interesting program for me. They're basically 100% barrel fermented, unless we don't. And that's the big caveat. Last year in 2019, I guess that was almost 2 years ago now. Oh, go ahead. Okay. Yeah, in 2019, we did an all stainless steel one, and it was really hugely successful. But we kind of really wanted to go back to our roots. And again, this is 100% barrel fermented. Normally, I do every single barrel as a different yeast and as a different nutrient regimen. And we only get, we've had as many as 30 barrels, but the vineyard has been kind of in a period of remediation. And so we've had smaller harvests really for about the last 3 years.
So how would you describe this wine?
Yummy. It's really good.
That's a good description.
It's a little bit, there's a little bit acid drive to it. You definitely get that in the mouth. There's
a little yeast on it?
Definitely yeast. Like I said, it was 100% barrel fermented. It was actually kept on the sediment from the barrel fermentation until the point it was bottled. So that yeast character was definitely one of the body points of it.
Nice citrus
for sure.
on it.
Yep. I think there's some honeysuckle too.
That I would never pick up. I'll let that to you.
Definitely some lemons. I don't like to tell people what they're tasting though, because I think the wine is an individual experience.
Well, how about this? And this is good.
That's what I say. It's really good. It's really good.
So I just interject. I've had, when he talked about an array, as a club member, I've gotten to sample the Dijon clones. I've gotten they even did an unoaked style steel tank one. They're all good. So we're going to try to find a way for you to get involved with this place before this is over. So do you want to move on to another one here?
Sure.
We talked about that Gruner.
Yep. If you could grab the bottle.
I'll grab the bottle for you.
All right. Co-op here.
Set that one over here.
Thank you. All right, while you're pouring, again...
Go ahead, you can start talking.
This is, we sort of had a departure for the 17 and the 18 Gruner. Well, actually, the 18 and the 19, really, we had a departure from our traditional style of doing it barrel fermented. In the 2020 Gruner, which is what we have here, we went back to that style. A lot of times during barrel fermentations, you know, like I said, I like to really play with yeast. So this one has 3 different strains of yeast in it. There's yeast that was isolated in France, in Portugal, and in South Africa in this. Wow. We don't do any spontaneous fermentations. Almost all of our fermentations are inoculated. Actually, really all of them except for once in 2013.
That's a very difficult way to wait for natural yeast.
Yeah, yeah. And I kind of think like the whole natural yeast thing, if you're in an area where for hundreds of years grapes have been cultivated, the yeast that will go to ferment those will be in those areas. We've only cultivated grapes here since 2008.
You talk, I'll drink.
Yeah, it's pretty good. How would I describe this one? It's really good. So again, this is an acid-driven wine.
Yes, very acidic, very good.
Gruner is
very food-friendly, I'm assuming.
Yes, that's where I was going. Gruner is one of those wines. It'll pair with pretty much anything you throw at it. If you're having like creamy artichoke dip and you need a wine to go with it, Gruner's your go-to. It's an amazing wine. It's a shellfish really well, seafood really well. It'll do meats really nicely too, like roast ear kind of steaks and chicken on the barbecue. It's great. It's nice to just sit down and actually just drink it too.
This is one that's, you stole my motto. If for those of you following, you've heard me say it, if not once, at least 15 times. Goes good with a glass, too.
Yep. Yep, it does. Yeah. So this is a special wine for us. You know, it was one of those things, like, in 2020, we had a very late frost. It was after Mother's
2020 was not a good year for a lot of reasons.
No, it was terrible. And everybody was shut in at home, and then we had this frost. And so in other varietals, we lost 70 to 80% because of this frost. In the Gruner, we lost a pretty significant amount, I would say close to 50%, but then the secondary shoots started pushing, and we saw clusters and fruit from that, and we ended up with a bumper crop of Gruner, and this really, like, where in years we normally see close to 100 cases, I think we had about 150 to 170 cases of this wine in production. So all of our wines are very, very small scale production. They're usually 100 to, in some cases, a Chardonnay, because we have the most of that. That's about a 600 case production, but everything is small. We're not one of the big wineries that have just millions of gallons sitting around, you know.
One thing that I have found in my wine journeys is that the smaller the production, it seems to be directly proportional in a good way to the quality of the wine.
Yeah.
And I always look for good small production wines, and yours certainly fit that bill.
It does some neat things. I mean, it really lets us pay attention.
Absolutely. Let's go on to the next one.
Okay, cool. Our next wine, I'm gonna clear some of these glasses.
Sure. We're bringing up the rosé now.
Yes.
You want to talk about this project.
All right.
For all of you, if you notice here, I feature it front and center. There's a different label there, but this wine is made here, but I'll let Jeff talk about that while we pour. All
right. So this is our New Leaf Rosé. This is the 2021. Sorry, 2020, not 2021. I'm not that fast. It is a blend, almost evenly split between Cabernet Sauvignon, Malbec, and Merlot. And these grapes, with the whole New Leaf program, what we did, we changed from Maple Springs being a state to the New Leaf program being grapes that we found people who were doing amazing work in viticulture, and we wanted to kind of highlight the viticulture and showcase the fruit.
Beautiful color.
Yeah. So this is from Horse Heaven Hills in Washington. It's a really small appellation. It's part of the Columbia Valley appellation, but it's...
that's like berries, crushed berries in there.
Yeah. In the last 6 years, there's been 500-point wines that came out of Horse Heaven Hills. And so we were able to really lock onto some amazing fruit.
Oh. Between the nose and the palate, you think that's going to be a little bit sweeter, but that is nice and crisp and dry on the finish.
Bone dry. There's no sugar left in it.
Fantastic.
Yeah, no sugar left in it.
It's got a little watermelon on it.
Yes. Yes.
I love that. That's really, very
This
good.
is a great wine for a beautiful hot day. It's my favorite summer wine. This is a neat wine because we channel some of it to our restaurants as well. So we actually keg this wine as well as bottle it.
Wow.
So anybody who has a little kegerator at home, you could have wine on tap. It's a lovely, lovely thing. It'll get you in a little bit of trouble, but it's a good kind of trouble.
So let me put a little advertisement in before we get to our last wine and say goodbye here soon. You're not going to find Maple Springs wine in PA wine and liquor stores or anywhere else. It's not distributed that way. In a nutshell, the way to get this wine is to get involved with the winery. You have to become a club member, and the club just simply involves you signing up and buying wine. There's no like membership fee or anything like that. And then you would become part of the members here at Maple Springs Vineyard, and you would get to come to events, get to bring friends, and get to do a lot of the good things that they do. Now we're focusing on the wine today, but I just want to put that little bubble out there to let you know that there's an experience here. The room that I'm sitting in, I'm flanked by these beautiful rolling hills, woods to my right, vineyards down below. The property has a swimming pool that you can come and swim in. They have summer swimming pool parties. So I'm putting in a little plug for them for them letting me come here today and sample some of their great wine. But if you remember and you've been following me, I've put their website out before in earlier posts and videos that I've done. I'll do it again because I want to drive home to you. Most of you are within, I don't have my addresses memorized of all of you that have joined the group, but you're within an hour's drive. And I would get on the website and get here. Because actually, if you come to an event and then you join, I think they waive the fee for the event. So there are things for you to do here. This is a wonderful experience. So back to the wine.
Well, it's good.
Yes, this one is fantastic. It's like drinking watermelon here on a hot day.
Yeah, the goal for this, a lot of rosés are I guess people have become sort of obsessed with the provincial style of rosé, and this is kind of the antithesis.
Is not that.
No,
it is not that.
This is the opposite.
This actually reminds me, and I'm sure you're familiar with it, more of like a Bandol style.
Yes.
Big. For those of you that, if you look closely, that's not your pink pale rosé. That is it's almost like the Rosato style from Italian rosés, and it doesn't taste like those, but it's just fantastic.
Yeah, I was kind of channeling my inner Bandol,
Oh, there you go. See, Doc G does know something.
Yeah, there you go. That's
so
great.
Why don't we go to our red to finish out here? You can steal that one from me. We're out of glasses, or do you have some more over there?
We got more. We got more. We're good.
And this one's warming up by the fire. That's not so good. But I'll let Jeff talk about this one. This is another New Leaf product.
Yep.
I didn't make it, so I'm going to be quiet here while he pours.
So this one is also from Horse Heaven Hills. I'm pouring like a winemaker. I'm sorry, I poured these big glasses. So
I'm only sipping. I'm going to drive home after this. I'll be good. And I'll eat some of that food back there before I go.
There you go. So the New Leaf Red is kind of a neat wine.
Violent.
Yeah.
Honest to God, there's violet on here. We were just talking about that before we got started here, that I seem to pick up the violet scent a lot, and this has big violet on it. Oh my.
Yeah, this was a neat wine. Like I said, this Horse Heaven Hills again. This is a blend. There's 4 grapes in it. The core of it, we want it to be Cabernet Sauvignon, but it also has Malbec and Merlot. But we wanted to give a little bit of a Rhone twist to it with some Petit Syrah.
That's fantastic.
So yeah, it's a drinker.
You know what? This is, I must confess, this is not one that I have sampled before from here. That's going to end today.
Yeah, so. I think it's just a really delicious wine. And again, it was designed to go with food. You know, the tannins aren't over the top. They're enough to clean your palate.
Do you happen to know the ABV? This is only 13. If you remember, for those of you that have been following, I talk almost exclusively, not exclusively, but I mention in passing what the ABV is. Some reds go 15. This is not that big, and you can tell. And you know why? It's pleasant. It's a sipper. This is another one that you could drink. If you prefer red wine, that's not National Red Wine Day, that's another day. We'll celebrate that at another time.
Well, the goal for all of these wines, I mean, my core for this is really to take the fruit that I have and balance it and bring out the best characteristics. So one of the things you'll see with us is incredible variation from vintage to vintage. And like I said, it's sort of channeling what the weather was. And ultimately, my goal is to say, okay, if you have this wine, you could take a sip of it and go, oh my God, that's what the weather was that year. And have that as a snapshot in a bottle.
Excellent. Well, friends, there you have it. Maple Springs Vineyard, Bechtelsville, Pennsylvania, maplesprings.com. It's easier to find that way. So I'd like to just say in closing, I'd like to thank one of the workers here, Vineyard Manager Justine, for helping me set this up. I'd like to thank Jeff for your time.
Oh, my pleasure,
thank you, my
Gary.
friend. And until the next time, friends,
cheers,
cheers and santé.
Thank you.